Nosferatu.
I thought it was just called No Dracula.
Nose Dracula Feratu.
I thought that was like the fancy script was no and then just Dracula, but I didn't recognize the letters.
Robert Eggers. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of GrimDark Media, and we just watched Nosferatu. Man, I was excited about this. I love all of Robert Eggers' movies. So if you guys haven't seen any of his previous films, he's like tone poem director for horror right now.
Yeah, if you wanted a movie, not that any of the movies are narratively unsatisfying, but if you wanted a movie where the setting, the set dressing, all of that stuff is king, like you feel the movie when you're watching the movie. Yeah.
And his first one, of course, I think he's probably best known for is The Witch. And that was 2014. And that was also Anya Taylor-Joy's, I think, first movie. Because she's young. Okay. She's like 16 or 18. Yeah. Like she's just a kid.
The first movie of his I saw was The Lighthouse.
Hell yeah. And that's probably, that was his second film. And I think is my favorite of his movies.
Yeah. Of what I've seen, it's my favorite.
Yeah. Because I think it's the most grimdark. Because it has the most elements in it. From the humor of like, we've got Willem Dafoe being a weird little freak, even more so than in this one. And then, because it's funny, this one feels like almost his most Hollywood of his three movies.
Yeah,
right?
He's built up his ensemble a bit.
Yeah.
Like actors he's drawn from other projects. You got to think that, especially in this one, the number of elaborate sets, there had to be a much bigger budget than there was for the previous movies. Yeah. It's a good film, but it feels more Hollywood.
It feels more Hollywood. And then Robert Pattinson is also in The Lighthouse, being an even weirder little freak. Somehow out weird freaking Willem Dafoe. And it's funny because I think you and I both said this. That movie was where we liked Robert Pattinson. Like we really saw him break out of like that typecasting of being like pretty.
Yeah, because he did that, and I think that and Tenet were pretty close together.
Yep.
And that's the moment where, for me, like a lot of guys our age, right, are going to hate on Twilight because they're terrible. But
they're forced to watch them by significant others and children.
But it's one of those things where that's got to be the point where you look at that guy and think, okay, that's not his career. Yeah. Like his career is not those movies. Like this guy is a good actor. He does other things.
Yeah, exactly. And like it's funny because him and kind of the Harry Potter of it all, or the what's his name, the Frodo of it all. Elijah Wood. They specifically sought out these kind of weird, freaky roles to get themselves out of that. And then the most recent one's The Northman, which is Alexander Skarsgård.
Which I have not seen yet.
A classic revenge story. It's fantastic, but all three of them are dark, grim, no happy endings. Like you're getting exactly what you think you're gonna get. And weirdly, this was the one non-A24 one. And
I'm gonna say that very final shot, the very end of that movie, that was the most unhappy I've ever been in a movie.
Yeah.
I love this movie, but I didn't feel good about what I was looking at the very end of
and also least horny thing in an incredibly horny movie that was also uncomfortable. So
oh cool, they're about to turn the lights on. Turn the lights off! Turn the lights off!
I don't like this. It was like the inverse Bram Stoker's Dracula. So if you guys don't know the story of Nosferatu, it is one of the classic black and white silent pictures from the 1920s. And is a legally distinct Dracula because they got sued by Bram Stoker's wife, I'm pretty sure, his widow, over the rights to Dracula because he just made the movie anyway.
Yeah, F.W. Murnau. This is one of those movies that, like, if you're not, like I'm not a big fan of silent movies and stuff like that. But like, I would say that Nosferatu and Metropolis are probably the two movies from that era that if you're a sci-fi horror fantasy fan, that generally people are still going to check out.
And they also, you see them in film school too, because they do a whole bunch of cinematography stuff, like just Light and Shadow, for instance, like just the famous scene of like the shadow of the hand going up the stairs in Nosferatu. And also they're popcorn movies. Yep. Like they're fun, weird, like movies. Like they're supposed to be like a blockbuster. They're made to be fun to watch. They're not meant to be a serious drama. They're not art. They're made to sort of be these like popcorn films.
And current Nosferatu is I'm going to call it film 3 in the Nosferatu trilogy of Nosferatu, Shadow of the Vampire, and Nosferatu.
And the story of the making of this movie, apparently this movie was in production from The Witch on and kept getting kicked. Because originally, apparently, the guy who plays Count Orlok, who is the Dracula analog here, had like begged to be in the movie and was going to be Harding. So Bill Skarsgård was supposed to be the sort of our like main protagonist.
Yeah.
and got kicked. Oh, and we both need to pull up IMDb to remember everyone's names because we're both going to immediately forget, or just call them by their
I was going to say this is the only problem with coming back to redo this.
Well, because both you and I are very guilty of immediately just calling people by previous roles in movies as opposed to calling them by their names. Yes. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Nosferatu, as we said earlier, it's kind of a point for point reimagining of Dracula, where a real estate agent is an up and comer, gets tricked into trying to go do a real estate deal with a vampire, is like eaten, and the vampire somehow falls in love with his fiance/wife, comes back to his native soil, and is defeated basically in this new land. So it's a travel adventure where they go to where the vampire is. The vampire then comes back to their land, having purchased this like land.
It's the same setup. It's basically the same cast of characters with different names. The
Avengers assemble to go defeat him, and then he's defeated by the end. In this case, the big plot beats that are different are the two are married. So like I think Jonathan Harker and Mina are both like engaged, I think they're engaged when he leaves.
Yeah, because they get married when he comes back and they think he's going to die. Yeah,
exactly. And they think he's going to die. Our rest of our ensemble cast are a wonderful host of characters. But basically the family that I think her name is Ellie. I think it's Ellie. It's Lily Rose Depp. Lily Rose Depp's character, who is, I'm pretty sure, Ellie. Yeah, Ellen Hunt. She's Ellie. And then Thomas Hutter is Nick Holt's character, who is the husband, the real estate salesman. Bill Skarsgård plays Count Orlok. Aaron Taylor Johnson, Kick-Ass, plays Friedrich Harding, who is
you poor bastard.
who has the worst run in this whole movie.
Poor bastard.
And Willem Dafoe doesn't, in Shadow of the Vampire, Willem Dafoe plays Count Orlok as he's like a real life vampire having a movie made
plays
about
Max Shrek.
He plays Max Shrek, sorry, you're
in
right.
Shadow of the Vampire.
In Shadow of the Vampire, who is playing Count Orlok. Who is a vampire in real life. Emma Corrin, who has been in something recently. I realized after we watched it that she had been in something, and I'm trying to remember what it was because I didn't point it out to you last time. She was Cassandra Nova in Deadpool and Wolverine. She was Professor X's evil sister. She's Cassandra Nova. That's why I was like, I know this person. She's bald.
My gosh. Yeah.
She played Cassandra Nova. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that went right past me.
I know, it went past me too, and it was.
She seemed familiar,
me.
But I couldn't think of where I knew her from.
It was bothering me, and then I realized later on. So she plays the wife of Aaron Taylor Johnson's Friedrich Harding, who was like the guy that they're building.
Poor bastard.
Poor her too. Willem Dafoe plays our analog to Van Helsing, which is Albin Eberhard von Franz. And then Ralph Ineson, who is the dad in The Witch, one of my favorite voices in A24 movies, plays Dr. Wilhelm Stiefers, your favorite doctor.
He plays a combination of my doctor from the Silver Bayonet campaign and oh my God, I just lost my train of thought. My doctor from the Silver Bayonet campaign and Mulder. Somehow he's a combination of those two characters.
He's also Mulder, yeah. Or maybe Scully. I think he's Scully and Willem Dafoe is Mulder. Willem Dafoe's the one who's reading the X-Files, and Iverson's the one who's like stuck with him, basically being like, "Are you sure this is what's happening?"
Wait a minute, I know a crazy man who can help us.
That's right, yeah. So quick beat for beat plot synopsis. Nick Holt's character is an up and coming real estate agent. His boss, played by God, and this guy didn't have a picture in this.
Yeah.
Gregory Gudgeon. Who plays Hartman, who's his boss, sends him to go make a land deal, basically.
Who, again, continuing with the analog, he's basically Renfield.
He's basically Renfield, yeah.
Except in Dracula, Renfield is Harker's predecessor. In this one, it's his boss.
In Bram Stoker's Dracula, it's Tom Waits. It's who it is. That's the important thing, is it's Tom Waits. We can't unremember Tom Waits from anything Tom Waits has been in, because he's Tom Waits. And he has to travel to... This was one of your favorite parts of the movie, to not Transylvania. They do kind of like a stab in the film where he's pointing in the map generally where in the Carpathian Mountains this guy's going to go visit Count Orlok in. And there's like a piece of book like half over
just
the word Transylvania.
Partially covering the names
and then he
of places.
pushes the book over top of it so you can't see Transylvania. There's a bunch
It's an unnamed country near the Carpathian Mountains.
Yeah, there's a bit of inside baseball like that. You realize they're poor, and she's going to be staying with his best friend, Aaron Taylor Johnson's
Oh my
character,
God, that
and Cassandra
poor
Nova.
bastard.
Yeah,
That
and his
poor
two little
bastard.
girls. And they set up, my favorite part about this, the introducing these characters is they do, he's like so happy. He's like, cheerio, good boy.
They are the family from Leave It to Beaver at the start of a horror movie.
Yeah.
You can all guess how that's going to
Everything's
end.
great. Everything's perfect. Everything's wonderful.
We're going to live forever.
We're gonna live forever. Yes, they're basically the Flanderses.
They're so upbeat. There's a scene where their children are basically skipping through a graveyard.
Yeah.
Like they're just like, no, everything's fine. Life is great.
Everything's wonderful. And Aaron Taylor Johnson's character owns
Oh
the
my
docks.
God, that poor bastard.
And he owns the docks, and shipping is great. His best friend obviously hasn't really made it yet, so he's going to take care of his wife while he travels to this unknown named, legally distinct.
But it doesn't matter. We're good friends. We're going to help you out.
We're going to help you out. It's going to be great.
Like he starts off the movie the nicest nice guy in the history of the world. He's rich.
He's super serious too. He's just like, don't worry, everything's great, old boy. Don't worry about that money I loaned you. It's going to be fine.
And none of it, we're not making it sound this way, but none of it is him lording it over people. Like he is just a guy who's successful and happy in his success.
And nothing bad has ever happened to him. Like you can tell.
Poor bastard.
They're setting up him to have the farthest to fall. So Nick Holt travels to not Transylvania, meets a whole bunch of Romani on the way, learns a little bit about vampires because he watches a vampire hunter kill a vampire during a weird
Maybe it was your dream
sequence.
Maybe it wasn't a dream.
But then he wakes up while he's in this this sort of inn, and there's mud all over his boots. And he realizes it was actually real.
But let's remember, respect. His boots were on.
His boots were on. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I forgot Lily Rose Depp telling the code for sex in this movie is
take your shoes off,
which gets repeated over and over again. He chastely leaves his shoes on for the rest of it. And then
he's a married man. Damn it,
he's a married man. I got to keep those shoes on. And then he ends up as like he's confronted by more and more somewhat supernatural stuff at Counterlock's castle. And meets the Count himself. The Count himself, who this was a nice detail. He's breathing even though he's dead, and it feels like he's breathing out of habit. Does that make sense?
So actually, I again a little bit behind the scenes. We recorded this a week ago, and then the video didn't turn out, so we're redoing it. Yeah. So I'd actually read a few things since we recorded it.
Okay.
He's only breathing when he's talking.
Yeah. Like he's
so he
forcing
takes in
himself
breath to talk, and then there's no, because you hear this labored breathing, but you only hear it right before he speaks.
That's right. And it's like he's forcing himself to breathe so that he can make words come out because he's a corpse. He's dead.
Yeah.
It was a really neat touch, and I hadn't thought about it until afterwards.
No, I didn't realize it at the time, and it was well done.
Yeah, and the introduction to the vampire is all in silhouette, all out of focus, out of frame, and entirely through this voice, this like kind of deep rumbling.
And this and a few scenes before this is where, even though the movie is in color, they really borrow a lot of shots from the black and white. Like the first time you see Harker entering the forest, the shadows over his, like, you completely can't see his eyes. Yeah. Like they really do a good job paying homage to the original film.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that art. And so this is happening kind of parallel to our story back home. I think it's in Holland because there's windmills when he's leaving. So I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be set in Holland, this city of Einrich or Hemrich or wherever.
It's somewhere Germanic, but I can't remember.
Austria, exactly. Holland, something like that. And legally distinct England.
Yes. Not England, even though everyone here is from England.
Yeah, and parallel as he's arriving at the castle, his wife Ellie is having like night terrors, and they're getting progressively worse to the point where the best friend Harding decides he's going to call a doctor. And he's like, "Oh my God, that poor bastard." and Iverson shows up, Witch Dad shows up, and introduces our doctor. There's weird stuff happening too, because as these night terrors get worse, he prescribes her a corset and then ether.
You got to tighten your corset.
Casually ethers her.
Have you bled her yet today?
Yeah, and then bleeds her to make sure that the ghosts get out of her haunted blood.
Oh my God, so good.
He's the best doctor. And
man of science.
And this is all happening kind of parallel at the same time. It all comes to a head as Nick Holt's character is signing the contract, and you're not really sure if the contract is a land contract.
He mentions in the film, he mentions in the scene, what language is this? I can't read it.
Forefathers.
And Orlok tells him it's the language of his forefathers, and just sign it.
And just sign it. And it turns into kind of a pact with Satan. And there's a lot of, what's really cool is the sort of magical horror of Orlok. He's physically imposing, and we should probably talk about the mustache. They make a real choice to detach him not just from the Nosferatu vampire, but also definitely from the Bram Stoker vampire here.
Yeah,
where he looks like he's Rasputin-y.
Yeah, he feels very Cossack between the mustache, the coat.
Yeah, and this big fur hat he's wearing in the beginning as well. And it's almost to hide how he looks in the beginning. He's just this looming, hunched figure. And he doesn't look healthy by any stretch of imagination. But Holt's boss has told him he's ill and can't travel, and that's why you have to go to him. So it's not unexpected. He sounds and looks ill, but the supernaturalness of it starting to kick off. And after the contract gets signed, he grabs Nick Holt and basically starts feeding on him. Starts feeding on his chest. And you're not sure if he's missing time or if he's been attacked, but everything gets kind of into a dream state.
Yeah, there's also from here until the time he leaves the castle, there's quite a lot of scenes where he's awake and then he's asleep.
Yeah.
And I don't mean he's going to sleep. It's he's just randomly, after being attacked, he's passed out, he's injured, whatever. Then he wakes up. He has no concept of how much time has passed. That happens a few times.
They're leaning into the hypnoticness of the vampire in this, as opposed to the physical power. It's not that he's not imposing, but his mind control, his mesmerism seems it's more the power that's being revealed here. And also his control over animals. There's these weird large dogs that are maybe wolves. And everything kind of turns into almost a fugue state for Nick Holt's character while he's in the castle after the contract gets signed. At the same time, Lily Rose Depp is becoming epileptic. She's having seizures. She's foaming at the mouth. She's just haunted and gaunt. And she's being almost spoken to after this contract gets signed by
he's communicating with her basically telepathically.
Your mind.
And as her physical, and this has happened a bit before, but as her physical condition deteriorates, she has alluded to the other characters multiple times that this had happened in her past.
Yeah,
this is not haunted before. New.
And this went away when she had met Nick Holt's character, that she met her husband. So now Iverson's having to become more and more involved, and they start looking for Nick Holt's boss because he's overdue. He hasn't showed up. He hasn't come back. It's been months now. And they can't find him until one day, one of the orderlies in Iverson's mental hospital is well, we got a guy locked in the basement. He's we're modern men of science. We don't lock people up anymore. They're we need to lock this guy up because we realize the boss has gone insane. He's doing naked enchanting spells, talking to Orlok.
He's doing naked 70s Aussie.
Yeah.
He's got going on.
And we realize that he has been in contact with Orlok the whole time. He's basically a thrall. And he's obsessed with blood and death and Orlok's arrival now in town. Nick Holt wakes up one day and decides, I am getting out of here.
It's enough of this.
It's daytime. So he manages to try and get out. All the gates are locked. All the windows are locked. All the doors are locked. But he does realize there's a crypt with a door that he can try and get into. And as he goes down there, he remembers the villagers killing a vampire in the local town, and decides he's going to try and kill Orlok. He doesn't manage to do it. Orlok just reaches up.
It's not great.
Grabs the pickaxe out of his hand. A bunch of wolves appear. They chase him out of there. And he goes over the side of the castle into the water and is eventually rescued by a stick grabbing local woman who is a nun.
Yeah, the nun who's collecting sticks.
She's collecting sticks for the nunnery. And he's just he's like an ET. He's ET in the side of the river when they find him. He's pale and
he's
not doing good. No, he's not doing good.
He's not doing great.
And at the same time, his wife back home is catatonic. She's tied up in bed, and Iverson, the doctor, has basically decided he's going to go and try and find his mentor.
Yes.
His mentor. And Aaron Taylor Johnson immediately becomes offended because he says, well, where is he from? He's Switzerland. He goes,
Swiss?
That was the moment that you and I both laughed
for all of the violence, for all of the 19th century medicine, for all of the weird stuff we've seen, the most offended any character has been so far is that poor bastard. Finding out that they're bringing a Swiss doctor.
A Swiss man. He just freaks out about it.
He might as well be Austin Powers' dad talking about
I don't
the
know.
Dutch.
Yeah, I don't know why he gets so offended about the Swiss, but he does not like that Willem Dafoe is Swiss. And they go looking for him and to try and figure out what's wrong with Ellie. They find him deep chasing the dragon.
Yes.
He is deeply into chasing the dragon and trying to turn lead into gold at the same time, and doesn't even recognize who's coming to the room. But the like moment he realizes it's his old student, basically, he kind of like wakes.
Everything snaps into focus.
And he's like, what's going on? They explain the situation and he agrees to try and help based upon all his forbidden lore. And I'll be honest, I almost love the Nosferatu Van Helsing more than Van Helsing. And not that I don't love the Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like, let's be honest, the two best characters in Bram Stoker's Dracula are Anthony Hopkins and Gary Oldman. They're both chewing the scenery the whole time, right? Like, they're just incredible actors, and they're like over the top portrayals.
The problem I've found historically is most movie iterations of Van Helsing, they're in way too big a rush to get him to vampire hunter.
Yeah.
Right? They're in way too big a rush to move him from weird freaky man of science to guy in Puritan hat sticking a wooden stake through somebody's heart.
Yeah. And in this movie, what we have is Iverson being Scully. So his pupil being Scully, being like, we need your help because I don't understand what's going on here. Him being Mulder, being like, I read all kinds of books, I think it's this, and thinking that they're chasing a Bigfoot. And then we have Aaron Taylor Johnson's character being Skinner, being like, what are you talking about?
That poor bastard.
What are you talking about? What is this? What is happening?
You Swiss idiot.
So they're basically Mulder, Scully, and Skinner.
Pretty much.
And the best part about it is Van Helsing, like the Van Helsing archetype here, Van Schwartz, whatever his name is, actually has no idea what he's doing.
No.
And he just says that out loud. He's like, I don't know. I read about this in books. I don't know what I'm doing here. But they go and check out Lily Rose Depp as she's like having her seizure. She's like, you've bled her properly, right? Unties her, and he's like, you can't ether anymore. She must commune with the spirits and like allow them to like pass through her. And he knows enough about, I guess, the occultism to try and give them some advice, but he doesn't actually know what kind of demon it is or what's
No, what they
possessing
reference when they go to him is that although he's a doctor, he was kicked out of doctoriness for being a student of alchemy.
And the occult,
so he's still kind of rubbed up against the sciencier side of the occult, but it's still the occult.
It's still the occult, yeah. And he's a little bit out of his mind. He's a big friend of the cat that lives in this room with Lily Rose Depp, who is also always watching and always present. And as his involvement begins, we have our parallel, like,
man, that cat sees some horrible things.
The cat sees some horrible things. We have a husband returning home, and then we have Orlok's last voyage of the Demeter. So they do the full-on Demeter ship thing where the Count is loaded into a boat to come to Berlinger, I think the place is called. And his arrival in the city is with an empty ship basically crashing on deck because he kills the entire crew. They go, like, we get flashes, basically like an interstitial of what's happening on board the boat as he's like killing off the crew, and like the last one alive tries to hunt him down and kill him, and he gets away.
He's been picking them off, and then they decide something's picking them off, so they have to go find what's trying to kill them, and it turns into aliens.
But it's the last voyage of the Demeter condensed into about like 4 interstitial scenes that last a total of like 3 minutes. And now everybody's back together in Berlinger, right? We have Orlok finally, like Lily Rose Depp, gets like a sense of something arriving in the city, rushes outside. It's her husband, and brings him inside. And then the first night that her husband is returned home to her, Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Oh my God, that poor bastard.
Is super excited that his friend's back. But Lily Rose Depp is then visited by Orlok, who refuses him. Because he shows up and he's like, you're mine. I've traveled all this way to have you. I've been dreaming about you. We've been texting. Like, what's going on? We said that we're going to smash. And she's like, no, I'm married. Get out of here. And he's like, you got 3 days. On the first day, I'm going to kill everyone you love. I'm going to make the city ill. On the second day, I'm going to kill people that you love. On the third day, you're going to be mine no matter what. And you have to basically re-wed yourself to me because your husband sold you to me in a contract. And she's like, he did what? And she resists him while Orlok basically on the first night unleashes a plague of rats.
Best
on the city.
Depiction of plague I've ever seen in a movie. Because like
so the comedy really ranks up here.
It does, but like a lot of times when you do plague in a movie, you go too far, right? It's cartoonish. Yeah. It's like, it's dump trucks full of dead bodies. No, this is once the rats hit the city and the plague takes over, everybody almost immediately becomes completely apathetic to the fact that there's just dead people.
It's wild.
At this point, dead people are not an event. They're set dressing.
They're just scenery.
Yeah.
And Robert Eggers really leans into it because like every walk and talk, every like oneer scene.
They're just walking down the stairs.
There's just
like
dead bodies
dude,
in the stairs. Just everywhere, eyes open. And Aaron Taylor Johnson has to run out to discover what's
that poor bastard.
Has to run out to try and figure out what's going on. Because the docks that he owned, there's this crash ship at that the plague's coming out of. And he's getting blamed for all this.
They're literally standing there looking at the ship that just crashed into the docks as the rats are pouring off of it.
Just pouring off of it. Our boy, not Renfield, not Tom Waits, escapes and disappears. And we think at some point probably offloads Orlok and all of the stuff that were his possessions.
Yeah, he's minioning. He's doing some good minioning.
To this mansion that he's bought during the land sale. And that's day one. By the end of day one of Orlok's like countdown, half the city's dead. There's plague everywhere. People are getting sick. Day two, this is where Aaron Taylor Johnson really has it.
Oh my God, that poor bastard.
He's like, I can't keep you in my house anymore. People are getting sick. People are dying. You brought a plague on my family. Kicks out our Harker analog and Lily Rose Depp back to their old apartments and goes to bed with his wife and his two little girls and a pistol. And then this is where we get our Shadow of the Vampire hand scene with the sort of like reference. We have this shadow of Orlok's hand as he sits in his ruined mansion cast over the city. And he just goes sleep. And Aaron Taylor Johnson just sleeps through his wife waking up. She's starting to get sick. Walking over to the two little girls' rooms.
She wakes up because she hears the girls screaming.
Because she hears the girls screaming. And the girls are just being torn to pieces by Orlok and eaten. And Aaron Taylor Johnson realizes it at the beginning of day two that like his girls are dead. And he starts to get untethered.
Yeah.
Completely untethered. And this guy's gone from like just helping out his friend with some money, having a great life, to now his entire family's dead and he's having a funeral. They very quickly get like some little baby coffins and a
those coffins were super creepy.
He must have had that on retainer.
So they have like these short coffins because they're young children, but they're super tall. Like the visual of them, you're like, whoa, this doesn't
It's very weird. And day two is spent with him just burying his family and losing his absolute mind. While Lily Rose Depp and Nick Holt are just looking on helpless, being like, "We're sorry, we guess." Yeah. Like, what do we do?
This is definitely his Wilford Brimley in The Thing moment, though, because when the whole thing's over, like he's irate, and then he's like, "No, I'm fine.
I'm just calm now. I'm fine now.
Everything's
okay." And then day three kicks off. Day three, Iverson and our Van Helsing, our Willem Dafoe, have been trying to figure out a plan on what to do. Just reading in books. Like that's literally what they can do is they can read in books. They've never done this before. This is where Willem Dafoe just admits like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like you guys called me. I've never fought a vampire before. I've never seen one of these things. Like I'm doing my best here, guys. And this is all in walk and talks with just dead bodies laying everywhere in the city. And Aaron Taylor Johnson losing his absolute mind because his entire family
he flips out when he realizes that all this guy's ever been doing is reading books. And he has no idea what's really
He's like, you don't know? But they come up with a plan that they're going to go during the day and try and kill.
Allegedly
kill. As
a YouTuber, you're supposed to know you have to insert the word allegedly.
That's right. But then to the side, Willem Dafoe is having like a final moment with Lily Rose Depp saying like, "Look, you know what you have to do," and she's like, "I know what I have to do." And apparently, what she has to do is through horniness, she has to keep Orlok in one place.
Keep the lights off. Please keep the lights. Keep the lights off.
And that's the reading that he's been doing is that there needs to be a sacrificial lamb. Basically, the person that is connected to the vampire is the only one that can keep them in one place until the sun comes up,
so that he can't return to his native soil, which is what he's brought over on the ship. Yeah.
And so the men basically go off to try and go to their native soil. Unfortunately, Aaron Taylor Johnson disappears, and they have to go looking for him before they can go and have their final adventure.
Oh my God, the weird sex! Why does the weird sex stuff keep happening?
There's so much weird sex stuff, and he's just decided to go have little Craven the necrophiliac with his wife back at the tomb. But I do like that Willem Dafoe does him a solid where they're like, we have to burn all of this. That's like, is she going to turn into a vampire? He's like, no, but this is like deleting the browser history of your body.
Like when he first goes into the tomb, right? It's just like, oh, my girls, oh, my wife. And he's holding her. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute.
And then you cut back to him just completely naked. And you're like, oh, no, this is, no. And he's died of the plague, and they're like, oh, we need to burn all of this right now and make sure nobody ever sees what this guy did. Yeah, he falls the furthest of anybody in this movie. So, like, he doesn't even get to the final showdown.
No.
And the final showdown is interstitials between Orlok basically having the grossest, the grossest intercourse with we see way too much of Orlok.
It's bad in the dark, and it's even worse in the light.
So bad. And
you know what I feel the worst for in all of this?
Yeah,
it's that cat.
It's that cat who had
the
to
cat
watch all
sees
of it.
all of it.
And then Iverson, Willem Dafoe, and Nick Holt going to the mansion to destroy all of the rats and the tomb. They've tricked Iverson, though, and Nick Holt into thinking they're going to kill the vampires. But when they open the tomb, they stake someone, and you think it's Orlok. It's not. It's the Renfield character who's been sleeping in the tomb, just pretend to be a vampire, being like, yeah, I'm a vampire. And then when they get back to town, they, Will Dafoe admits, like, no, I knew. Like, there was no way for us to actually kill him. He's too powerful. All we could do is make it so he has nowhere to go back to.
Yep.
And she had to keep him in one place until the sun comes up. The sun comes up, Orlok dies, and our final scene is...
Oh my God, the sun is up now.
Just petting the cat as we pan over, like, their post-coital embrace of the zombie monster with the
Orlok definitely skipped
so
leg day, for starters.
Yeah, he either gets really desiccated by the sun really fast or was like that the whole time and we just didn't notice, and it is super gross. And Willem Dafoe just being like, it was beauty that did slay the beast, and petting a cat, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, why is he Blofeld all of a sudden?
Just cuts to credits, holding a cat, just being a weird freak.
I hope somebody got some therapy for that cat.
And that's our Nosferatu. I really enjoyed it. I love this movie. I thought it was
fantastic.
It was great. It's the right mix of not meaning to be funny, but being funny, which Robert Eggers does really well. It's the farting in the lighthouse.
You break the tension. Like, you can't do sustained horror for like 2 hours straight, right?
Yeah.
So you have to break the tension so that the next horrible event you have somewhere to descend to, right?
Yeah, and I do think that someone else said this, but I thought it was really apt. Robert Eggers is becoming the grimdark Wes Anderson.
Yes.
Where the tone poem of it all, especially in this case where you're doing a remake, you get to take something that's already been done and pastiche it even more. You know what I mean? Because what you're doing is you're doing an impressionism of an impressionism. You have this great dark, like black and white movie, and you're taking all of the things that the technology couldn't do back then in a way that's believable and taking it to today's level, tech level, and making it believable and making it's dark instead of twee, right? So it's got that same thing where, like, they're doing with the grimdark sort of like horror, they're doing, the same thing that Wes Anderson does with, like, weird cuts and like that reverse shot flip, that 180 camera.
Yeah, especially when he does the one hallway to the next with the character in the middle. Yeah.
And there's a lot, if you even just look at the camera work's very Wes Anderson, but done in a way to be scary as opposed to being like this like kind of twee, bright, shiny.
So we talked about this, right? It's the grimdark Life Aquatic.
It is. Yeah. Well, yeah. I would say it's the grim. Yeah, it is. It's the grimdark Life Aquatic.
Because you're Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, you're Willem Dafoe. Yeah, he's leading B Squad, but he's the leader of B Squad.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in B Squad. Yeah, but you're the leader of B Squad, Klausy. And I do think that this is also his most... It's not my favorite Robert Eggers movie because it's the most Hollywood, because he had a bigger budget.
Yep.
And because it's not his story. What he's done before is he's taken folklore things. This is him taking a vampire, but because it's based on another movie, you kind of have that expectation that it's going to take from the source material.
I will say, though, that even though, and I agree that it's his most Hollywood movie, it's not diminished by that.
No, I agree. Not at all. That's it. It doesn't take it down, but it doesn't have the... Because I know the story, there isn't the unknown of The Witch, The Lighthouse, and The Northman on first viewing. I know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, I know it's going to be a vampire story. It's not an original Robert Eggers vampire story. It's Nosferatu. So it's going to hit all of these major things and all these major points. It doesn't make it bad. It just means that, for me, the first three stand out as being these, I took this folklore thing of witchcraft, of eldritch horror and the insanity of the sea, of, Viking revenge, and I made it my own thing. It's Nosferatu, but done by Robert Eggers.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that. I love that that's him getting to have the career and the money of going from art house movie maker to something.
I felt like I walked out of the theater having seen pretty much the exact movie I wanted to see. Like, going in with an understanding of what his movies were, and what the original Nosferatu was, I walked out of that like, yep, that was it. That was what I wanted. I feel very satisfied.
And it had just enough winks at the original to be satisfying if you're a fan of, film history and stuff like that.
We've talked about that before. It's a fine
the
line
alien
to tread.
Romulus of it all.
Yes, I like. There's a certain amount of nods and winks that are fun, and a certain amount where it's like, come on,
I'm all done. I get it. It's Nosferatu. Cool.
Stop staring right into the camera.
Yeah,
I'm tired of this.
yeah,
But no,
yeah.
they didn't overdo it.
Well, overdoing it would have been like cutting to in between frames of text and stuff like that to being like, hey, look, it's like a silent movie. Like they didn't do anything like that where they're winking too hard. It was little things like like acknowledging that this is Dracula, the Transylvania being half covered up by the paper and pushing that over. All that little stuff that I think makes us go like, oh, I love that this is self-aware, but not like feeding it down my throat.
Yeah.
So overall, I say if you haven't seen this in theaters, I would say go check it out in theaters because you get the loomingness of that black and white and because like it does have the Robert Eggers soundtrack of like the big whom, like the heavy bass thrum music and stuff like that.
But again, the visuals and the set dressing, perfect. Like,
just turn the lights off and watch it at home. When it comes out on streaming, you'll probably have just as good a time.
There's no huge effect shots where I think you need to see it on a big screen to really get it. Like it's a setting piece.
Yeah. It's more if you've got a really good audio system, I think you get a better thing from it. But that's true of all of his movies, just because the way that he does sound is very like visceral, like it thumps your chest to try and make you feel something. So overall, would recommend. Definitely, I think qualifies as grimdark media. Nobody has a good time. There's no happy endings for anybody.
No, if we were going to rate the movie, I would give it 5 weird boners out of 5.
I'd give it at least an 8 out of 10 in weird boners, and uncomfortable horniness. And then I do think that everybody involved got the assignment.
Yeah.
And to me, and it's funny, that's another Wes Anderson-y thing. His ensemble that he's assembling of people that he works with often, you're seeing them understand him as a director and him understand them as actors in the same way that Wes Anderson does with his ensembles.
It's interesting because, Wes Anderson is the closer comparison, but the one I keep coming back to is Tarantino, right? Because you always hear, like in these later Tarantino movies, you always hear these stories, usually from Sam Jackson, about him just explaining how it gets made to some other newer actor in the cast. It's like, no, man, this is just how it works.
This is just Tarantino, man.
Just do this.
Or who's the other one recently that's been reusing the same people over and over again? I just had it in my head. Did The Lobster and Kinds of Kindness. Greek name. Stenophilus. Anyway, the comments will tell us that guy who just did. What was the other one? I said The Lobster. I said Kinds of Kindness. He did one in between those though. Oh, he did Poor Things. Yeah, that same thing where you have kind of like the same actors over and over again that keep coming through and they get kind of
probably the more popular, widely consumed version of this right now would basically be Mike Flanagan.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. In the prestige TV world, for sure.
Yeah.
Mike Flanagan.
But where like Mike Flanagan has cast 8 actors and everything he does is just the same 8 actors.
And they all get it and it's all fantastic. Yeah. So highly recommend. Again, not my favorite of all of his movies, but then I think that's a bit informed by what type of horror I like too. Like you and I both like cosmic horror, so The Lighthouse is going to stick out for us.
I also think it's one of those things that you have recency bias when you watch something, but the other thing is, I think sometimes something like this, it needs to sit, it needs to be rewatched a bit to decide how good it is.
Yeah. But
funny. It is good.
It's funny because that's Midsummer for me. I liked Midsummer the first time I watched it. The more times I rewatch Midsummer, the harder it is for me to watch it because the more it affects me and the more I'm like, oh God. You know what I mean? Like there's movies that are like that where they almost get harder to watch.
Yeah. The
more you internalize it, you notice things. This might be one of those movies, although because there's comedy, it makes it more rewatchable because it's funny. You know what I mean? Because of the tension breaks and stuff like that. One, it gives you that contrast of highs and lows. Like the thing with Grimdark is it can't always be soaked in dread, or it loses relevance.
When you try to do that,
the horror loses horror.
When you try to do that, it always comes across as an emo kid writing bad poetry in black ink on black paper.
Yeah, exactly. Right? It gets too edgelord.
You're so self-serious that this is just crap. You can't take it seriously.
Yeah.
And when you can just step back enough from it to make it feel like, oh, this could be a thing in the real world, only 100 times worse. That's what really brings out the grim darkness and the horror, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you have to have contrast, otherwise it doesn't work. So anyway, there it is. We just watched Nosferatu. Hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for Jay for coming to the movies with me.
Yeah, thanks, man. That was fun.
If you guys were watching, thanks, I'm Ash.